Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 news. Mercedes have given a big update on the development of the W14, stating one small mistake they made last season snowballed into a set of decisions that cost the W13 up to 4/10 of a second. They believe they can unlock that time relatively straightforwardly on the W14 to get them back to where they need to be to fight for wins at the start of the season alongside Ferrari and Red Bull theoretically. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always as well. We hit 14k subs yesterday. Love to see it. Let's crack straight on with things. Firstly, no major big news here from Ferrari. Their 2023 Challenger will be red. They probably pull a gag like this every single year, to be honest. Now, another update to mention on the circuit Barcelona Catalunya, or whatever exactly it's called. So this is the Spanish circuit, of course, which, honestly, I kind of like it, but for overtaking, it's not always been the best. Certainly in the previous era with the dirty air and stuff. The only real opportunity is down the main straight into turn 1 with DRS. The rest of the lap is pretty difficult. Now, one of the key issues that's affected this the last few years has been this chicane, this dastardly chicane at the end of the lap that fans and drivers alike aren't particularly a fan of. So this is this part in the grey here that goes right and then, right, left, right again, right before the end of the lap. The issue with this is that the dirty air through this section, even with the new cars, is a bit of an issue. It also means the momentum that the car trying to overtake can carry out of the final corner is much less than it would be if they used the old circuits, which I believe they got rid of for like safety concerns, but nowadays I'm sure it's fine, especially with the new ground effect cars. So this is what the circuit could look like with this fast right-hander actually returning again, which is much more swooping into this side. And the reason why, if you guys have been following the channel for about 5 or 6 weeks, you'll know we talked about this before, but everyone's up in arms about it because they spotted it on the sales for the Max Verstappen Grandstand, where you guys can see here, this is where the Verstappen Grandstand is, of course, the site of his first Grand Prix victory back in 2016, and the circuit they have here is, with the same curved corner after turn 9 like it is now, which is the same as the grey on this one. So it's not this red version here, it's this grey version that will still be used, but the final corner or the final couple of corners will now probably be curved as really they should be. Gives much more momentum to the car trying to follow, should be much better for overtaking as well, and it's going to raise some interesting possibilities, especially down into turn 1 where the bulk of the overtaking is usually done on this track. So that's one update there. Also, Saudi Arabia, we know that Saudi Arabia is going to be in Formula 1 for a long time to come, but it's actually going to still be at Jeddah until 2027 at least, because there's another circuit they're creating at Qadr, I'm guessing, where I think they were trying to do it, but they've got the Jeddah circuit anyway. Honestly, the Jeddah circuit is fantastic, but it is a bit dangerous, and I think they're trying a few things to address that for the start of this season. We saw the numbers then for Ferrari, the absolute hopium that's in full effect again, and maybe it'll finally come true this year. The hype train has left the station, and their car is going to be over a second faster than last year's car. Mercedes are coming up with numbers which are more conservative than that, but in fairness, this is what usually happens. Ferrari hype it pretty hard, Mercedes are pretty reserved. You never really hear much from Red Bull, to be honest, and there's a few other teams that are hyping themselves up as well, such as Aston Martin, we'll see in a second. Now, Mercedes technical director Mike Elliott actually gives a very interesting kind of diagnosis on what went wrong last season and exactly how much lap time they could have extracted had they got that thing right. So he believes there was a single data point in the simulations last year that led them down one direction. They should have gone a different direction, and that would have saved them a lot of time. So he believes there was just one mistake they made, and as he goes on to say in this article, what we targeted in the car, interestingly enough, we had right when we started. So he reckons they got it right initially with the W13, then they had a result in simulation which caused us to go in a slightly different direction. It's easy to go back and say, why did that happen? But I think in all these things, it's always easier to look back in hindsight and know that if we hadn't done that, we'd be in a very different position. Goes on to talk about scuba diving. I'm not too familiar with the analogy he's discussing here, but he talks about the incident pit. And I think the idea, what he's saying is, sometimes in scuba diving, something will go wrong, and you've got to make the decision at that point to abort mission and basically go up to the surface and start again, because if you continue down that path, then it can go horribly wrong and you get into a lot of trouble. So I think what he's saying here is that first mistake they made was very difficult to spot, but if they had have known at the time that that was the error they made based on one data point and one data anomaly in their simulations, they would have gone down an entirely different route. It's very easy to look back and say we made the wrong step, but he's very clear here that they know where they went wrong, precisely what time and what place and what different decisions they made in a row that caused them to have these issues, and obviously by understanding where the problems originated, you can presumably prevent that from happening yet again. So he goes on to discuss here the fact that we ended up in a position where we started last year at the front of the midfield, occasionally slightly worse than that, and Saudi Arabia, whatever, Hamilton and his car was not working around there. We ended the season, I'd like to think, with the second quickest car, which on the balance is probably true. Of course, in Brazil, where they won anyway, and even in Austin, for example, where Ferrari weren't so competitive there either, and Hamilton was, the second quickest car to Verstappen on the day. So the decision we baked in wasn't one that was massive. We're talking about something that if we'd have got it right, maybe we would have been 3 or 4 tenths quicker. So, I mean, still, Mercedes are always going to usually under-egg the advantage they could have gained, but nonetheless, it's quite interesting that they say if they made a different decision, they'd have been potentially 4 tenths faster right at the start of last season with the car that they had, which would have put them, I mean, okay, Bahrain, they were maybe 6-7 tenths off the pace last season, but they'd have pretty much been there or thereabouts. Certainly on the higher downforce circuit, even by the time they got to, Zandvoort and Hungary, without, with a significant degree of development, but not a crazy amount of development, they were already within a couple of tenths, if not fast enough to get poles, as George Russell did there. So had they have been 3 or 4 tenths faster at the start of the season, they, would have been kind of there-ish on some circuits, but they'd have been maybe the fastest car significantly on some other circuits. And clearly they believe, by stating this, that this is a problem that they can solve, because as he says, it's difficult to say that if we hadn't made that one mistake, would have been winning the World Championship. That's not the right way to look at it. But he says, look, we know we made a mistake. We know that there's performance to unlock by changing it, which is what, of course, they're planning to do. Some of the upgrades they brought tried to address those things, or not even to address them necessarily, but just to confirm that was the source of the issues. As he says, some of the upgrades we brought towards the end of the season, let's say in Austin, that did improve the car, but it also confirmed that was where they made the error, and therefore we need to do the rest of the job over the winter to fully, they can't change everything on the car throughout the season, so, start from scratch again. The W14 won't have those issues, potentially gaining, 4 tenths of a second from that alone. Now, how this plays into the other factors, how much the other teams are improving, who knows? Whether that's the only source of potential improvements to the Mercedes, that's also another question. But, based on what he said here, it seems plausible to expect Mercedes will be there or thereabouts at the start of the season. Of course, part of that does depend on how good Red Bull are. We don't usually hear that much from Red Bull, to be honest, at this time of the season. They keep their cards relatively close to their chest. We know that Ferrari, their cars are meant to be a second quicker than last year. We'll see if that comes true. If it does, very scary for the competition, but it might just not be the strength of the car at Ferrari. There's other factors in play, and even Felipe Massa has made his intentions clear to look, Vasseur, you've got to make some changes there at Ferrari to ensure that things don't happen the way they did in 2022. Now, one other team that's been gassing themselves up beyond belief as well is Aston Martin. Alonso joins the team already. The hype train is leaving the station for Aston Martin as well. So their car in 2023 is completely different to last year's car. You guys can see what is effectively the green bull here with the side pod design, which has been copied and pasted straight off the Red Bull, or they don't say that's true, but pretty similar, let's be honest. They also reckon that when they do their car launch, it will be the real car they'll be running, not just a livery that they're going to run with on an older spec version of the car. So they're very optimistic here. They also state that more than 90% of the parts are different. Now, whether that means better, I don't know. But yeah, definitely lots of confidence going around from Aston Martin right now, throwing around statements like this, that our car's massively upgraded, there's 90% of the parts that are different to last year. Don't know what that number would be on other cars, because at the end of the day, a lot of things are going to get very marginally redesigned or made with different materials to be lighter or whatever the case might be. Now, this also from Autosport, we've implemented a few clever innovations on the new car. They are the icing on the cake. So, I mean, this really is next level from Aston Martin, right? They're gassing themselves up really hard here. Can't lie. They're saying that the car's changing, entirely different car. They're going to be really competitive. They've got a few clever innovations. They're even describing them as clever for themselves, which is also kind of interesting. So yeah, how competitive do you guys think Aston Martin will be? It seems unlikely that anyone outside of Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes will be the top 3 teams, but Aston Martin started last year consistently going out in double Q1 eliminations. They ended last year with a very strong car that was challenging, McLarens and even Alpine sometimes, and were kind of, solidly in the midfield, and we're getting good results from Vettel and Stroll both. So this season, if they can take another step there, they could be fighting towards the front of the midfield, which I think would be quite exciting, especially if their innovations that they say are clever are actually as clever as they think they are. And also just an update to give you guys on the Mercedes situation, kind of confirming that Hamilton's contract rumours aren't as advanced as some sources have been indicating, suggesting that as it stands, contract negotiations with Hamilton haven't even really started. So, I think Toto Wolff said that they're going to sit down soon and get it all sorted, but it might not have happened quite yet. There were some massive numbers getting thrown around, like 400 million euros. I don't think that was for the next 2 years until he potentially retires after 2025. We believe if there is a contract extension, it's probably going to be to the end of 2025, but it might be like another 10-year deal as a Mercedes ambassador or something outside of just being the F1 driver. So apparently nothing really concrete has been decided as of yet, but there are also rumours suggesting that the contract's extension and the length of which will rely on their performance and competitiveness, which makes sense as well. So Hamilton will probably want to say, look guys, if our car sucks again this year, like, and it's not looking so good for the entirety of these regulations, I don't want to be, stuck kind of beholden to this contract. And if it's looking really good, then maybe I can even go another year, for free or whatever if I choose to, something like that. So, of course, Hamilton's never going to get booted from Mercedes until he decides to leave, but nonetheless, that's a quick update on what might be going on there. So very much intrigued your thoughts on all this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.